Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 45 of the ITSM crowd. My name's Claire Agutter. I'm the host for today's session, and our topic is enterprise service management. Maybe that's something you're not familiar with, but by the end of this 30 minutes, you will understand it in great depth. Our guest today is expert service management consultant Doug Tedder from Tedder Consulting. And the first thing I'm going to do is ask you, Doug, just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Oh, good morning, Claire, and thank you so much for having me. Oh, apologize for the background noise, but thank you so much for having me on the show today. It's really a pleasure, and I've been looking forward to chatting with you today. I've been in service management now for, I was just writing another blog the other day about this, almost 20 years.
Wow.
And so I've seen some evolution here, and I think we're going through a bit of an evolution again. And hence the enterprise service management thinking that I'm starting to do. But like I said, been involved in service management for about 20 years, been active in the industry for a number of years. And, the thing I've learned about service management, the more you think you know about it, the more there is to learn. And that's what really excites me about it.
Absolutely. And I think anybody who stops learning, then, you're stagnating in your career. So I fully support that. Lifelong learning is a big passion of mine. Doug is going to be with us for the next 30 minutes. We're going to be chatting around the topic of enterprise service management. But if you would like to ask Doug any questions while we're live on air, we are keeping an eye on Twitter as well. So you can use the hashtag ITSM crowd and just, ask away. We will pick those questions up and we will answer them. But I am going to jump straight into definitions because that's what I like to do. And explain to me, Doug, what do we mean when we say enterprise service management?
Well, so there's a couple of answers I want to give to this one. I think there's the popular answer that you often hear, and then there's what I would consider the real answer. The popular answer that you hear a lot is just extending IT service management into the enterprise. Okay, that makes sense. It might sell a few magazines, that kind of thing. But the challenge that I have with that particular approach is most folks, when they look at IT service management, really have not done IT service management. They've done IT operations management.
Okay.
And so when they say we're going to push this out into the enterprise, all they're doing is pushing out operational kinds of things.
Yeah.
I would prefer to look at it as service management across the enterprise, where we are actually doing things and supporting, underpinning the delivery of value through the organization. And that's where enterprise service management comes into play. It's the enterprise that's having to work as a cohesive unit to actually deliver value through all its various departments or capabilities within an organization to a customer. And so that's enterprise service management. And in my opinion, a lot of folks that are thinking they're going to expand IT service management into the enterprise are really just perpetuating bad service management practices into the enterprise. But it's a place to start, I suppose.
Yeah, I must admit that's normally the context I hear about enterprise service management in. So it's things like, we've got a terrible onboarding process for new employees in our organisation. So we're going to bring the concept of request fulfillment and take it outside of the IT department and, extend that. I must admit, come across it so much in the way that you're describing. Is the root of some of this, do you think, in this split that still happens where we talk about the business and IT as being separate entities? Is that what you think drives enterprise service management or the need for it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I also think that there's a lot of just people don't companies aren't thinking in terms of the value stream. When I started to become familiar with value streams and got in a little bit into lean and that discussion around value streams, I think that's that was kind of eye-opening to me. Really, when you think about a value stream, that's the thread that flows through the organization. And part of the challenge always has been with IT service management is IT has always acted as a separate entity within the organization. So we're not only having to cross that chasm, but we're also having to cross the chasm of, oh, by the way, I'm on, your example of onboarding, perfect. When you think about onboarding, think about that, how that value flows through the organization. You've got to talk to the HR people, you got to talk to IT people. If you're working at a corporate campus, you're talking to the facilities people. Somebody's got to set up your workspace. You're talking to corporate security. They were going to get you a badge. I could go on and on. What I'm seeing is that a lot of organizations, okay, here we go, service management. We're going to set up a centralized self-service portal. And oh, by the way, you open those 6 different tickets to engage those 6 different people or 6 different organizations to affect the onboarding. Not a bad thing. You've centralized it. It's manageable at that point. But you've opened 6 tickets, whereas if you understood the value stream, 1 ticket should have done. 1 work stream should have gotten all that done. So that's how I kind of think about enterprise service management, and that's, I think, one of the more significant things that we've got to overcome if we're going to be successful at it.
I agree. And so based on kind of the clients that you're working with at the moment, are the specific problems that are now highlighting the need for a more enterprise focused approach, or, are you seeing companies actually adopting this right now?
I think they're doing the old ITSM way and not thinking about it in terms of enterprise. God bless our tool vendors, and we got to have tools. And I'm not here to disparage our tool vendors, but they've made it seem like it's an Amazon experience. It's you click on this shopping cart item and this item and this item, and presto changeo, there you go. Okay, yeah, that is a good first step in the water. But I think, especially as we start to move further and further into the digital age, we have to start acting as a whole unit. We have to start acting holistically. And the experience that new employees, existing employees, customers of companies, they are expecting an experience that is frictionless, that is seamless. They don't have to know all of those various entities that are involved in the onboarding example. They just know they need to onboard somebody, and that's what they should be able to request. And I think that's the big challenge, is getting people to think more systemically, more systems thinking kinds of design thinking into their service management as they push it out into the enterprise.
And I think for those of us who have a service management background, we kind of look at that and think, well, of course, why wouldn't you? But again, we see these inefficiencies and this waste happening in pretty much every organization that we work with. And part of it, I think, to me, comes back to this idea that it's still ITSM.
Yes.
And where would this live, I guess, within the enterprise? Who's owning this in the organizations that you're working with?
Yeah, ultimately, and I said this in my latest blog, ultimately, enterprise service management has to be owned at the enterprise level. I am not necessarily so concerned where within the enterprise. It just has to be owned by the enterprise. I have a strong opinion about what it could look like. I like the idea of the IT service management office as the central place for managing IT service management. I think that concept can be extended out into the enterprise if it's done well.
Yeah.
But does it have to be done that way? No. But I think that's really going to be the key to success, is that it is actually owned by the enterprise and not by IT. Can IT contribute to this? Absolutely, they should, and we can. They are we, right? We're IT. And I think where we can contribute is really with good, effective process design and understanding value streams and value stream mapping and those kinds of things can certainly help drive enterprise service management. But it's got to be owned by the enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely agree. But even then, I think sometimes it feels fuzzy. We're pushing it out and saying this needs to be done, and then the first question is, okay, so who's doing it? Who's looking after this?
Yeah, well, and I think again, learning from some of some lessons learned from some of the ITSM implementations that I've been involved in. It sounds great. like you said, we see the inefficiencies, we see the waste, we see opportunities for improvement, but that doesn't make a business case for us.
Mm.
And until we make a compelling business case, and I think that's where IT can also help. Why would the enterprise even entertain things like that? So there's step one. But another consideration is, as we start to enter the digital age, having enterprise level processes and enterprise level service management is going to become critical. We're going to earn or lose a customer within the first few seconds of the experience or interaction with our company. And consumers are not doing business with the HR organization or the shipping department. They're doing business with the organization as a whole.
Yeah.
If the organization doesn't have its, the service management clearly defined, I think it's going to start to become a differentiator in the not too distant future. I really do.
Yeah, and it's I was reading some of Simon Wardley's tweets earlier this week, and he's talking about the fact that there's so many organisations, waste millions, if not billions of dollars collectively, and the only thing that's saving those organisations is that other organisations are as inefficient as them. So once we've got somebody in your industry who's got their act together, they're going to pull ahead very, very quickly.
Very quickly, and it'll be very noticeable. It's I think one of the things that service management in general, as it's applied to IT, suffers from is that nobody really talks about it.
Yeah.
And there may be some great things going on from a service management perspective within an IT organization, but nobody really talks about it. Enterprise service management is going to be much more visible, and it'll be much more transparent if it's done well. And so it's just something to be aware of. But I think that's the world in which we're moving. Things are becoming much more visible, much more transparent. It's going to become easy to determine these companies are really have their act together. They have very little waste in their processes, and it shows. They're able to respond quickly. They're able to react much more quickly. And the key there is process. It really is. And I know maybe process has gone out of vogue over the last couple of years, but I think it's the key. I really do.
I think perhaps overly bureaucratic process has gone out of vogue. But, if we apply a sort of a more DevOps approach, a more agile approach, once we understand process, we can automate process, and extending that thinking across the whole organization is just as valid as it is talking about IT processes.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, and I've talked about this quite a bit lately as well. I think if you wind the clock back a little bit on ITSM implementations, a lot of them were sold as methods of control. But I think we took it to an extreme, and our processes have actually gotten in the way of getting things done versus facilitating. So you're exactly right. It has to be just enough process. It has to be a more lean or agile approach to process, and if we can do that, I think it's going to be a significant breakthrough for those companies that are able to achieve those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think if we look at looking at some of the vendors in the industry, if we look at how organizations like ServiceNow position themselves, they've kind of evolved from very much pretty much an IT service management tool set to something that is enterprise wide and is looking at business goals. It's looking at improvements across the organization. So you can see that trend kind of coming through in the industry.
Absolutely. ServiceNow is one. There's a couple of others out there that are starting to differentiate themselves, that will lend themselves very easily to enterprise service management. I welcome it. I think it's a good thing. It still doesn't excuse us, though, from doing the dirty work of understanding how value flows to the organization and mapping that through, and putting the appropriate level of control and around how we deliver that value. And again, that's where I think good IT service management principles and concepts can help. Good ITSM professionals can help. So I'm excited about it. It's far overdue, in my opinion, that IT gets out of service management.
Yes.
It should never have been just IT service management to begin with. And I think that was perhaps if I think about where we were 10 years ago, and many IT organizations really didn't recognize the value that they should be bringing to their organizations and bringing a customer service attitude. That all made sense. But again, I think we took it way too far. And it really comes back to what is it, it's about the business. It's about our enterprise. What are we trying to accomplish? And I think that's where we need to go. That's why I'm so excited about it. I really see a real opportunity to advance that kind of thinking into the enterprise. And I think we can add some value there because, quite frankly, the enterprise has not thought about it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're working with your clients, how does that engagement normally start? What's the trigger for organizations to start thinking about service management from the enterprise perspective?
Well, I guess there's a couple of things that I would say. One is maybe the obvious one is they have a capability and a tool set, and they feel like that, boy, this would be nice if we could just extend this out. There's a couple of clients that I've worked with. They've taken their ITSM tool, quote unquote, and now they've extended request fulfillment into the facilities organization, or they've extended request fulfillment into the HR organization, and they get some initial wins out of that. The recipient organizations do appreciate the visibility and the ability to work, manage the workflow and that kind of thing. But then they start to recognize, wait a minute, and the onboarding is such a relevant example. That's the one that everybody can kind of relate to. Wait a minute, if I'm onboarding somebody, don't I have to talk to HR and IT and facilities to onboard someone? That's not how we're set up. and wow, yeah, we may have been able to speed up or affect some of those individual, I'm going to say the S word now, Claire, silos.
Oh,
yeah. We may be able to speed up work within the silos, but we're still in silos. And again, and that's what I point out to folks or clients is that now it's time. You've got this, that's great, but now it's time to stitch them together. If I onboard somebody, I'm going through some stream or some chain of events to make that happen, and that's typically how it gets started.
Yeah. So is it that businesses notice that this is costing them money, or they see a potential for service improvement? Is it kind of the sort of the pain that normally drives them, or is it that they're looking to make things better?
Yeah, I think it's the pain that kind of drives it. I think they are moving a bit cautiously because they want to take care of some very, onboarding, quite frankly, as important as it is, in my opinion, that's low-hanging fruit. And it's a good place to kind of exercise the muscles around what it really means. But I think we're at the very early stages of this. I think companies that I read about that are starting to go through that thing called digital transformation are recognizing that value flows through the organization. They have to have service management of that value stream through the organization, and they're starting to go very much in that direction. Those folks right now, in my opinion, are the early adopters. They're leading the way. That's great, and I think there's the next wave will get as folks start to see the successes with this, and it can be done. I see another wave coming, but right now it's really those early adopters, the folks that are kind of pushing the envelope, that are really starting to drive this beyond what I would call the low-hanging fruit things.
So for the people who are watching this now, and the people who kind of watch on catch up, a lot of our audience is service management professionals who are kind of pigeonholed within IT just because that's the way many organizations are structured. So how would you recommend to them that they get started? If they're seeing this opportunity and thinking this is brilliant, what can they do to kind of start to elevate their role, and where would you recommend they kick things off?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I have said to folks, I say it to folks when I'm consulting with them. I say it in my blogs. You got to put on your business hat. You've got to build your business acumen. You've got to be able. If you can't understand the business of the business, they're not going to listen to you when you come out and say, "Hey, I've got this ITSM thing can really work well across the enterprise," and there's so many things that we've not done. While it's a great idea, don't get me wrong, there's so many things that typically organizations have not done to position themselves in that regard. So I think the first thing to do is really build your business acumen, understand the business of the business, understand where the profit drivers are, where the pain points are, where is their competition, what market spaces. You have to be a financial analyst, no, but you have to understand your business to the degree that you can talk intelligently about it. The second piece of advice that I perhaps would offer is build some allies and within the business. Go talk to them, have coffee, just kind of talk to them about their pain points, how they're currently using technology, where they're struggling with that, and then see what you can do from an IT service management perspective to affect that. Get some of those little small wins, even within the IT part of that. And then say, when you get that win and it's visible and you can show that you've done that, then go back to those allies and say, hey, I appreciate your insight. Here's what we did. How do you feel? Hopefully you get some positive feedback. They will want to work with you some more. Then you suggest, maybe we can apply this to other areas in the organization. That's a couple of places to kind of get started, and build up some knowledge, expertise, skills, experience, if they will. Then at some point you got to build the business case. I keep coming back to that. There's got to be something into the business in this for the business versus, boy, wouldn't it just be cool just to have a centralized service desk and a self-service portal? No. That's nice, but okay, 6 months out from that, gosh, geez, I have to open up 6 tickets to onboard somebody, and okay, we kind of missed the target there. So anyway, that's my thinking.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely spot on. And one thing that occurs to me listening to what you're saying is this feels to me like it links to this whole concept of employee experience as well, because businesses, I think, are getting better and better at understanding consumer experience, how important that is. But then they maybe forget the whole employee experience thing as well, when that's proven to be just as important, because happy employees deliver good service and that leads to happy consumers. And it's that kind of, I think it's kind of getting your house in order so that things are done well. You're not creating unnecessary friction for the people who are working on your products and services. And that then, I guess, makes their day a bit nicer.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's a couple of things going on there. I think as organizations have become more and more tuned into the customer experience, they started to put a lot of focus there. And I think you're spot on. Really, the focus needs to start with employee experience. And then the other things will come along, and we can define what that needs to look like for the user and what that needs to look like for the customer. So I think you're spot on there. It really, the other thing that I think organizations are starting to be getting to tune with, we spent so much time talking about value, and what I value and what you value may be two different things. That doesn't make either of us right or wrong, but the experience is going to become just as important, if not more so, than the value that I get with working within an organization. It really is going to become equal to, if not exceed, the need for value. Now, does that mean we throw value out the door? No. But the experience is going to be just as critical as delivering value.
And I've been biting my tongue a little bit while we've been talking, because this links to a little project that you and I have been involved in over the last year.
What project would that have been, Claire? I'm struggling to think Have we been working together for the? Yes, we
Yeah.
have.
It feels like a year. Um, it's so you and I have been working on the Verism project, which was initiated to take a fresh look at service management, and that there is so much in Verism which to me links to the things we've been talking about, you know, looking from the perspective of the whole organization, focusing on outcomes, focusing on employee and consumer experience. Do you feel like the work we've done with Verism will maybe help drive this conversation forward a little bit?
I certainly hope so, because one of the things that attracted me to Verism, if you recall, and so I'm going public with this one now, Claire, when you and I first chatted about Verism, and one of the things that we talked about is the organization as service provider,
Mm.
and it's just like, oh my gosh, that is so. That is the core thing I think about Verism that can really be the difference maker here, is thinking about the organization as the service provider. Quit thinking about different parts of the organizations as service providers,
Mm-hmm.
because we've got to act as a single holistic entity here, and not one part of the organization can work in isolation from any other part. So this is where I think Verism, and if you take, if you kind of put your ITSM back in the back of your brain for just a little bit and look at Verism with a fresh set of eyes, I think it will be, really refreshing to see what we've done with Verism,
Mm.
and how it can really help. And I'm just really eager to really promote and get Verism thinking out as part of what I do as well.
Yeah, because I think you mentioned earlier on this idea of taking IT service management principles and applying them across the organization, and that was our real strong focus in Verism. Was, let's think principles, let's think what we're trying to do, and not get dragged down so much into process minutiae. It's important, but the big thing is, what do we need to have in place as an organization? And that's where value streams and understanding outcomes just become so much more relevant, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to wind up. I mean, and I keep coming back to the onboard. We're not going to wind up with this 49,000 line process description for
Mm-hmm.
onboarding. HR is still going to have its processes that it needs to do, facilities, IT, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it in terms of what outcomes do I need to deliver, what are the principles that I need to stay in bounds, and what am I really trying to do as an organization? I think that's, it really is a new way of looking at an old problem,
Mm-hmm.
and doing it in a way that makes sense, without trying to over dictate, or overly manage or overly define. It puts enough structure around it so that we can work together and make it happen, recognizing we've got to work together.
Yep.
And but yet let the individual capabilities of an organization do what they do best. That's why we have people in HR. That's why we have IT capabilities. That's why we have all those other capabilities. That's what they do best. Let's put them in an environment to have the best opportunity for success. And that's where I think Verism can be very, very valuable to an organization.
Yeah, and we do have a short free course on the ITSM Zone website. So if you've not seen much about Verism, then you can take the free course there. And we've also got a webinar next week where we're launching the next phase of Verism. So you can register for that via the IFDC website or the Verism website. So I like to finish on a top tip, Doug. So something fairly brief, but top tip for somebody who's been inspired by what you've been talking about today.
Give me a call. No, maybe that's not a tip. I don't know. First of all, it's been such a pleasure to chat about this. It's something that I feel very strongly about. It's something that I've gotten a lot of passion about, especially in the last year. But the top tip is even in this really changing world, we're faced with so many new methodologies, emerging technologies, blah, blah, blah. The top tip is focus on what makes sense for the business. Build your business acumen. and you know, and consider that to be another tool in your toolkit. Don't throw away all the good things you've been doing from a IT service management perspective. You're going to need those tools, but put your business acumen hat on, put your business perspective hat on, and now look at it from the business perspective. And I think those IT service management professionals that can do that and do that successfully are going to be greatly rewarded over the next couple of years. Service management is more important now than it's ever been, and it's critical to get it out of IT. So that's my top tip. I hope that helped.
Completely agree. And we'll put some links. We'll do a blog on ITSM Zone just to recap this session, but we'll put some links through to Doug's blog as well, because Doug is a prolific blogger and shares some really valuable information. So we'll put some links for you there as well. That's our time for today. That's absolutely flown. Huge thank you to you, Doug, for joining us. It's been
my pleasure.
Really informative. Our next ITSM crowd is later this month, and we're going to be hearing a little bit more about ITIL 4 from some of the ITIL architect team and authors. So we're going to look at ITIL past, present and future in our next ITSM crowd. But thank you for joining us today. Really hope you enjoyed that session. Thank you again to Doug, and we will see you on the next episode of the ITSM crowd.